Okay, we will start. Welcome to everyone to the PMI webinar about water security. My name is Matteo, and I introduce this webinar organized by PMI Northern Italian chapter. Before beginning, I will explain some basic rules and information. First of all, I remember everyone that this webinar is in English language. For this webinar, PMI will provide you one PDU in technical field. The PDU will be approved in some days, so don't worry if you don't see it immediately available. You all have the chance to make questions, but not directly to the presenter. You can write the questions in the chat window, and then I will choose which questions asked to the author. Obviously, I will choose the questions in order to be not repetitive and in order to respect scheduling. You can write the question also in Italian language, and I will translate for you. After the webinar, you will receive automatically in your email a survey. We kindly ask to answer to this survey in order to help PMI to improve itself. And now I introduce you the author of the presentation, Mr. Andrea Rubini. He is the Director of Operation of Water Europe, the European Water Technological Platform, which is based in Brussels with more than 200 members across Europe. He is expert of policy and European funds for research and innovation in the water sector, environment preservation, and climate change. The mission of Andrea Rubini and his colleagues is to develop a water smart society in which the true value of water is recognized and realized, and all available water sources are managed in such a way that water scarcity and pollution of water are avoided. PMI North Italian chapter chooses to organize this webinar because the management of water, that we have to consider a limited resource, is something that infers on everyone. With this webinar, we wish to provide you an overview on policies, actions and funding from European Union about water management. As you can imagine, it involves a lot of people, and in particular, all the European citizens are stakeholders, and a lot of tasks, which require a good applications of all project management techniques. So, I give immediately the floor to Andrea to start the presentation.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andrea Rubini. And I would like to thank the PMI Northern Italy for this opportunity. I hope that you can hear me well. I'm the director of the operation of Water Europe. Water Europe is the European water technology platform that is based in Brussels, and we work in order to support the water sector in achieving important results since 2005 approximately, when the technology platform were established and supported by the European Commission. This is me. Matteo already introduced my profile, and you can find also here my email address, and then you're welcome to address me in the coming days, questions, or you want to establish a contact. I am available for bilaterals and whatever could be necessary in order to provide you with additional information and clarification concerning the water sector and what is going on. So let's start with what is really well known about water. We know that it's essential for all life on our planet. Our body is made basically of water, 60% or more is made of water. We need it for any kind of activities. Every day we need at least 2-3 liters of water that we get in different ways. We drink water, we get water from food and so on. And this is well known, but there is some kind of areas concerning water that are not so well known by everybody. And this is one. For instance, you can see here that fresh water represents 2.5% only on planet Earth of the all available water on the globe. So it means that 96.5% is ocean, and 0.9% is saline water. And then you can see also that out of this 2.5% of the fresh water, groundwater represents approximately 31%, and what is kept by glaciers and ice caps is 68.7%. So it means that the surface water, let's say the rivers, the lakes, the ponds, represent only 1.2% of the total 2.5% of fresh water. Then, if we go to the surface and other fresh water breakdown, we see that 3% in the atmosphere, 20% is in the lakes, 0.49% in the rivers only, and what is left in the ground ice and permafrost. So it means that the real available water, fresh water, for our daily use, for households, for industries, for agriculture, for urban environments, for cities, is really a very small amount of a very limited resource. But we can see this from another point of view. Look at this slide. Now, this is the planet Earth. Then you see the biggest sphere, blue one, that is all the Earth water. This compares to the size, to the dimension of the planet Earth. Then on the right, where is written all of Earth's fresh water, you find a very small sphere. And then there is almost an invisible one. You can see that the one where is written fresh water in our lakes and rivers. So this gives you the real dimension of what is the available fresh water on our planet. Seems to be nothing. And it is actually a very small quantity. How do we use water? Well, I think that this is well known, but you might not know how this is used in different areas of the world and for different sectors. Let's say that at a global level, 69% is used for agriculture, 19% for industries, and just 12% in the cities. And this might be surprising, but actually the cities are not the ones consuming more water at global level. But it's the same in Europe, where you can see that most of water is used by industries. The Americas is still the agriculture. In Oceania, Australia, New Zealand, it is the only case where water is by cities, is modern industry, along with Africa and Asia. But as you can see, it's the Aquastat from the FAO. At the end, only 12% at global level is for domestic use and 19% of industrial use. But you can see how much this is concentrated in Europe. Using a lot of water at industrial sectors means also to pollute water at industrial sectors, as well from the households, as well from Europe, as well from agricultural use. Now, we wake up in the morning. It is likely to happen that we're going to drink a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, going to prepare our breakfast. I think that one of the first things that we do when we wake up in the morning is opening one of the taps of our house. One of the taps of our house, and then we fetch water. That's easy. But maybe that we are not thinking about how that even small quantity of water arrive to our glasses, and what's going on, what happens then to the water that goes into the sink. And this is commonly given for granted and forever. We are used to have water at home. We are used to open water, to have water availability whenever. And we think that this is easy, but actually it is not. And when I say that it is not, is that what we are doing now, how we are using water, and this at global level, it is not really sustainable. It is not forecasting the future. It's something that is already going on. This is along with other challenges like climate change, the loss of biodiversity, the matter that, for instance, I don't know if you know, but we have lost something like 90% of the wetlands in the last 50, 60 years. These are all key indicators of the matter that water is at risk. And when water is at risk, whatever is at risk. We use water for everything. We use water for irrigation. We use water for industry. At industrial level, water is the most used diluent in the world. Water is essential in the food supply chain. Is essential in the process from farm to fork. If you think to the beverages, just to give an example, think to Coca-Cola, what do they do? PepsiCo, or whoever. What could they do without water, or having a restriction about having availability of water? Large companies, large water users like Coca-Cola or PepsiCo, they are fighting, they are struggling in order to reduce the quantity of water that they have to use to produce 1 liter of products. Because it is not true that, you can imagine that for each liter of drinkable product, you're going to use, much more water than it is the final product. So it means that reduction, for instance, of 10% of the quantity of water used in the process would provide, substantial additional profits and being in a more secure situation, because it means that you consume less water. That means that you might have more water available. But what we do now and what we have been doing now is really not sustainable. And this is just the opposite of what is required today. That means circularity. What we do with water is we take it, we use it, that means we pollute it, and then we treat it and dispose. So take, use, and dispose. It is not really sustainable. Never been sustainable, but now it's much worse and much difficult to manage in this really not feasible way, one of the most important and limited resources that we have in our planet. And the water risk is not, as I said before, something that will come. It's already here. If you go through the reports, the last reports of the last years of the World Economic Forum, you find water as classified among the top 3 priority. Let's say the top 3 risks for the industry, for the city, for the agriculture, for the society, let's say for the sustainable development. And as you can see, water is related to any area of our possible development in the world. Consider that 3 out of 4 jobs depends on water availability. 92% of the global economy depends on water availability. And still we think that these resources can be available in the right quantity, in the right quality, at the right time, and the just price forever without effectively being able to manage it. So why water becomes a risk? Because up to, let's say that now, 2020, we already have a 1.2 plus billion people that are at risk for flooding. Let's say that around 456 billion have been lost in the last 35 years because of floods and droughts. 11% of European population is affected by water scarcity. That was, 2017. And because of the last 2-3 years of drought in Europe, this figure, it is likely to be bigger than 11%. 60% of the European water bodies are not of the requested quality. As I said, 70+% of global employment depends on water, and almost 1 billion people of the world is without water access, and 2.3 billion are without sanitation. So this is a picture that already gives us the idea that water, it is not a common available or accessible to all resource. Now, what is the water stress? Let's give a definition of water stress. It is a balance. It's a mathematical balance between demand and the resource availability. So, of water, of course. And there are important drivers that rule these factors. Climate, because climate controls, all the process of the availability of whatever is water resources, because water is one of the real renewable resources that we have. The seasonality in water supply, because if you think to the matter that agriculture depends on availability of water, this is not only the water that we fetch from the water bodies, that could be the groundwater or the rivers, but it depends from rain, or it depends from the snow. So if the season changes because of climate change, then also the agriculture is affected, the cities are affected. And then the extreme events that are generated by climate that might change completely the availability of water in different regions in the world. Water demand that is driven by the population density. That is something that we might have not understood well in the last 50 years, because this is related to the economic activities. Just a while, just reflect on the population density and on the population growth on the planet. In 1999, at the end of 1999, early 2000, I was already in Brussels, not on a permanent basis, but I was used to come here pretty often. At the time, I was working for the UNFPA, the United Nations Population Fund. And I remember that I was here to celebrate the publication of a report that was called 6 billion. It was 2000, year 2000. 2020, we are 7.5 billion. So it means that in 20 years, the population on this planet grew of 1.5 billion units. That is impressive. But this maybe that we already knew that this would be the pathway. But what we didn't really understood or consider enough was the matter that the population pattern changed across the last 20 years. If you think that in India, the middle class 20 years ago was about 2-3% of the total population, and now is more than 10 times more. It is 25-30%. And that middle class, like in China, that middle classes wants resources, they consume energy, they consume water, they consume food in a way that was not as we expected 20, 30, 40 years ago. So water demand changed a lot. And of course, water quality follows the capacity of this planet to provide quality of water that is enough for our requirements. This is the picture of the water stress in Europe and in the countries along the Mediterranean areas. We have 1/3 of the EU territories all year round. This is a recent data from the European Commission that is affected by water stress. I live in Belgium, and I think that most of you think that Belgium is always under the rain. For some extent, I mean, it's true. It rains pretty often here. But in 2018 and 2019, the Flanders declared a state of emergency because of water scarcity. And you can see that there is a red area, almost brown, just south to the UK, and that is Belgium. So Belgium is not different from Sicily in terms of water stress. And the quality, 60% of surface water is not satisfactory. 30% as well of the groundwater, it is not satisfactory. We are still dealing with legacy pollutants in addition to the contaminants of emerging concern that across the last 40 years, we've been able to detect more and more in our, particularly in the groundwater. Now, this is a picture of the worldwide growth in water use and demand. You can see that in the OECD countries, the water demand is, I can say acceptable, but is pretty low. In the BRICS, will tend to increase a lot. The same increase will be also in the ROW country, that's China, India. And then you can see that in the world, the total increase of demand of water will be really high. And particularly, you can see that manufacturing will require a tangible, substantial increase of the water demand, as well as for the production of energy, particularly electricity. And this is not really not sustainable. So it means that by 2050, from today, just in 30 years, we are going to have an increase of 55% on and of the pressure on water resources. Now, what is water security? I think that now we might think that we can arrive to the point, to describe it. On the right, you find the kind of manifesto of the UN about water security and what are the cornerstones that can ensure water security. But then what is water security? It's about management. Water, water, why could be scarce? Why water could be not enough? Well, I mean, the first thing that comes up into our mind is that water might be scarce or not enough because it's too little. That's correct. Water, when it's too little, when you don't have enough rainwater feeding the rivers, the lakes, the water layers underground, that's true. I mean, it's not enough. So water will be scarce. So when it's too little, but also when it's too much. Because if you think to a floods makes the available water not accessible because it's polluted, because the infrastructure are broken, because the infrastructure collapsed. So when it's too much, when it's too little, we are in front of water scarcity. And also when it's polluted, when it's too much polluted, and when it's too costly to treat water and to get it once again suitable for our purposes. So water scarcity could be because water is too much, too little, or too polluted. So what is important is the capacity of management of water resources and water supply chain in a sustainable, systemic, and effective way. It is not any longer what we saw before, that is, take, use, and dispose. That is not really possible any longer. Water security means to protect the life of people. It means to protect the properties from water-related disasters. It means to protect ecosystems, to protect biodiversity that is at the basis of the capacity of our planet to be responsive, to be resilient to exploitation of the resources. It means to protect and to support the economic activities and sustainable development. It is managing adequate resources in terms of money. Another reason why water is scarce or could be scarce, it is that it has been underinvested. And if you think to the water utilities that provides water in the cities, let's just stop to the cities, and where we have an average of leakages or losses that's around 25 to 30% in Europe. But there are places, I don't want to mention the places, but there are places, and there are not so few, where water distribution networks can distribute only 30%, 30, of what has been put into the network. It means that 70%, 70, is lost. This is because investments are not being managed well, or because of full lack of adequate investments. And then last but not least, what is extremely important to have water security is that water is considered as a circular resource. Now, we have a summary of needs here, as you can see. And on the right, you see the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, that been completely endorsed by the European Union. So it means that whatever the European Union will do in terms of sustainable development of the Union, it is also based on the definition and the goals of the SDGs. Now, what we need in terms of it is a short summary of the needs. The water sector is really wide, and then there is something else. Actually, there is no water sector. I just ask you, can you define the water sector? What is the water sector? It is providing water to the agriculture. It is the digitalization of the water system. It is the chemical, utilization of water in the chemical industries. It is what? The water sector is as much is as much fragmented as much is difficult to define. But what we need is to secure long-term resilience and stability and sustainability of the water systems, because we need to recognize what is the real value of water. If you think to the value of water and you associate to the value of water the price, the cost of water, we are completely out of track. This is not the value of water. In Italy, 1 cubic meter of water costs around 1.5 euro before tax and VAT. In UK, it is around 1.9 before tax and VAT as well. So then in the end, 1,000 liters of water costs really nothing. But at the same time, it's costly to move, to treat, because that 1,000 liter, it is fetched somewhere, put into distribution network, pumped, and it arrives up to your tap every day. And then after the tap, it goes into the sink. Somebody will collect it. We have sewage systems. Then we have wastewater treatment plant, and then we have this whole system to dispose the water once again in the water bodies. But this is as a cost, and the cost is low, it's nothing. But then, that is not the real value of water. The real value of water is what we can have with that 1 cubic meter, because that is essential to our lives. This is essential to the industries. Just getting back, to the issue of the beverage, that is the more emblematic and easy example, to bring up. You buy a bottle of Coke, you pay, I don't know, €2, and the value of that water at the beginning of the process is nothing, is even not few cents. So it means that the real value of water is what we can produce, how we can protect our lives, how we can protect our environment with that water. That is the real value of water. So it means that we can transform the water in something that is economic relevant to the economic sustainable of our society. And then what we have in the water is very important. We can harvest the value in water. This is made of nutrients, this is made of energy, this is made of the water itself when we are able to reuse and recycle it. We need a systemic water strategy that is based on the connectivity between water management, stewardship, innovation, and market. We need a circular approach, a systemic approach. We need to develop innovations in living labs environment. And we must create new business models and business strategies for public and private sectors. UK is a great example how water is managed by the private sector in many parts of the country, and it works. And it is not a problem, as many could see. For me, what is important is that water can be provided to the users in the right way, at the right quality, quantity, time, and the just price. Now, let's go to the European Union water policy framework that is much more complex than what many people could imagine. We have the so-called Mother Directive, that is a water framework directive, that gives the room to a number of directives that are, at different levels. That is the Groundwater Directive, the Environmental Quality Standards Directive, the Floods Directive, and the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive. As you can see from the line around the boxes, the black lines means that they've been recently evaluated. For instance, the Water Framework Directive has been assessed as fit for purpose, so we're not going to change it. But the Urban Wastewater Treatment Directive has been changed, and recently we approved. We adopted a new directive that is about strategic approach to the pharmaceuticals in the environment. This is because pharmaceuticals are one of the most important contaminants of emerging concern. We are going to, the European Union is going to give emphasis and stress the importance of the water reuse regulation, particularly for the minimum requirements for urban wastewater that we hopefully will use in agriculture, and the recast of the Drinking Water Directive, for which minimum criteria for drinking water will be assessed in a short time. At the same time, we have other instruments that might seem to be far from the water topic or the water challenges, but are not, because we have the Marine Strategy for Framework Directive, the Plastics Strategy, and what is particularly important is the Industrial Emissions Directive, because many people associate the Industrial Emission Directive to the gas emissions. It's not true. It is any kind of emission, including any kind of waste. And unfortunately, this directive is a bit old, and in my very humble opinion, doesn't fit the purpose in 2020. Then we have the Nitrates Directive, the Sewage Sludge Treatment Directive, and the Bathing Water Directive that is particularly important in a continent like Europe, where bathing water represents a very important asset, particularly for the tourism. Now, this is the intervention logic towards water security. We have threats, we have objective, a general one, and specific objective. Or, as you can see in the threats, we have on the top the climate change, because climate change could be the drought, could be floods, but extreme weather events could completely disrupt the economic system of a place like Europe. As we said, the increased population and also the demand from the population in terms of resources is increasing. Demography and consumption behavior change. Let's imagine, I don't know, I mean, I'm a very mature professional. I was born in the 50s, and to my understanding of what I remember of my the period when I was even 20, is that we didn't consume so much energy. We didn't consume so much water, particularly at home. And then, I mean, we have the other sword of Damocles hanging on our head. This is the pollution, because pollution is increasing wherever in the air. And I mean, the COVID-19 crisis demonstrated that human activities are at the basis of pollution of our environment. The objective is to secure water, just to secure water. And the specific objectives, you can see there, I mean, a number, but what I can pick up from here is that what is important is to demonstrate and fostering the uptake of results and innovation outcomes by engaging the industry, all the users, the cities, the agriculture, and to have an open market in order that these research and innovation results can become reliable, affordable, innovative solutions for the users. What do we need? We need a water smart society. A water smart society means a society where we recognize the true value of water. Is where we can manage effectively water scarcity and pollution of our water resources in order to avoid them. It's a society when we base our activities, we base our plans, our work plans on the circular economy and of the best way to use the resources. When I say we base this on circular economy, it means that we do not become circular because of the act of a wizard. Running systems are not circular, and there is no efforts that will be valid if we try to apply circularity on what is now as it is, because we must rethink our development systems, our development pathway, our society from the circular point of view since the very beginning, since the beginning of the process. When we fetch water, we already should think about circularity, but much before that, as well as when we dispose water. We cannot dispose water any longer. We must reuse water at different level. And to do that, we have to introduce a new concept for the matter that we do not have only one water. We have multiple waters that we'll see in the next slide. But as you can see, in order to recognize the true value of water, what we need? We need technologies. For sure, we need innovations. We need new, innovative, affordable, and reliable solutions. We need, to rethink the infrastructures, because water, we cannot transport water without having infrastructures. We can partially replace them with database solutions. But then in the end, in order to have something that's really sustainable, we must rethink our water infrastructures in a way that we have a combination of hybrid gray and green infra that are robust, resilient, and flexible. Then on the top, we need a good governance, because without a good governance, we go nowhere. And good governance means to have on board public authorities, the private, the business sectors, the citizens, whoever has an interest, and tell me who has not interest in having water on board of a decision-making process. So these are the four cornerstones of the water mass society. You can see here from the slide that we have multiple waters. We have different kinds of waters. We have the recycled gray, the recycled black, the blackish, saline, the brines, the rainwater, the surface water, the groundwater. Each and every kind of water can fit the purpose of different users. I mean that we do not need to treat water in the same way for each and every user. It means that we can recycle water in order to provide fit for purpose for water from a wastewater stream almost directly to another user. It means that we have the industry, the agriculture, the households, the service and irrigation, and the nature itself that requires different kind of waters. So we have multiple waters, we have multiple uses, because for each and every user we have multiple kind of uses, and then we have multiple kind of products, because industry will provide products, agriculture will provide food, homes is our daily life, service and recreation is healthcare care, tourism, and so on, and nature is our environment. Is our life. About the daily life, did you realize that across this more than 2-3 months of COVID-19 crisis, the basic services have been able to resist to the shock? And when I say basic services, I mean energy, I mean water, I mean communication. It all worked. I mean, we don't have disruption on energy. We don't have disruption of water supply. And this should make our think that matter that our systems must be resilient enough. And the the COVID-19 crisis, it is not, a war, but nevertheless, it might have put at risk the capacity of the system to provide the services. Try to imagine for a while to be without energy for a couple of days in your house. You can't go out. There is a lockdown. You purchase online. a lot of food products that you put in your fridge and your freezer. Then you throw all it away. Try to imagine to be 2 days without water in your house. And try to imagine in this house there is a family of 4 people. Can you just imagine what could be the bathroom of this place after 2 days without water? So these are essential components to our life. Without this, our capacity of being as we think to be completely collapses. And you see that there are 4 cornerstones around that are the tools, the smart governance on the top, the modeling and analysis, the big data, the digital water represented by sensor networks and other solutions. Because then in the end, the four concepts are multiple waters, digital water, because we cannot manage water without completing the transition to the digital water management, the value that is in the water, and the new rethinkers, the new high degree and green infrastructures and other-based solutions. What we have, I'm running because otherwise I'm going out of time. What we have here is that the European Union provided the framework program for research and innovation. The Horizon 2020 is going to expire to finish this year. That provided 80 billion for research and innovation across 7 years, and water got about 1.5 billion euro for research and innovation. And what is next? Sorry, water security in Horizon 2020 pointed basically into to the transition from the IWRM, that means integrated water research management, to the nexus approach, where we see the problem and the challenge of water in a nexus way. Nexus means that water and energy, water and food, water, energy and food at the land. That means, that we focus on synergy, symbiosis, we focus on governance and innovating financing. But this is going to be over quite soon. What is next? What is next is Horizon Europe, with a similar structure to Horizon 2020. For the time being, has not been adopted yet, but the budget should be around 100 billion euro for the next 7 years. But then we had an additional problem, or rather, we had an additional policy, more important policy from the European Commission. That is the European Green Deal, where water represents a very important component, a key enabler of the Green Deal. We are going to rethink all Europe in a green way, and is not, this is a real game changer. And how this money will come from? The money will come from Invest Europe, from the EU budget, from the public and private investment. And what I can say is that this was up to December 2019. But then we had the COVID, the COVID crisis, and we need now, to build on a resilient green and digital Europe much more than before. And what is forecasted by the European Union is that 3,500 billion euro will be made available for rebuild our society in a resilient, green, digital way with a systemic and sustainable approach. This is the EU post-COVID-19 recovery plan. Here you can see the different measures and the different allocation of budgets. And what I can say from the water sector is that for us, and not only for us, but for the industries, from the cities, from the agriculture, from the natural that cannot speak, but can show us how could be in troubles if water is not successfully managed, effectively managed. It is the water smart society. And then I leave you to a very short movie that we prepared, is 1.5 minutes, that will explain you in details the connection between the water smart society, the Green Deal, and what is next after the COVID-19.
The COVID-19 is a wake-up call for Europe, stressing out how the European Union and its member states are not well prepared for cross-boundary and cross-sectoral crises. Europe must be smart in its reply to this crisis, not only focusing on curative solutions, but also preventive ones. This is the way to achieve a sustainable Europe which can be resilient through risk management, prevention, and mitigation of crises. Water knows no borders. It is an asset for Europe. We can use water as the enabler to reboot and accelerate the recovery of our society. Globally, more than 3 out of 4 jobs depend on the supply of sufficient water. We need a new paradigm towards a water smart society, from crisis management to risk management and prevention in Europe and beyond. How can we contribute to a strong post-COVID-19?
Thank you very much for your attention. And well, I don't know how to get back from here. Okay, good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Andrea, for your presentation. Really, really interesting. And thank you for explaining all really clear. And I have some questions from you. There are many questions from a lot of people. And I will go more or less in order. So there is a question from Enrico. He asks, why a lot of water is no more available? It's not yet destroyed. Cannot be simply recycled and recovered?
If you can give me all the questions, then I will reply one by one.
Okay. Right? Okay. Yeah. Then there is another question from Roberto. He asks, I would like to know what actions the European Union is taking to prevent water stress. I think this you explain. I don't know if you want to add something more.
The name of the person is
Roberto.
Sorry? Roberto. Yes.
Okay. Then I tell you another question from Michael. Are there initiatives that aim to changing the mindset and the behaviors of users toward reducing waste in water usage? Okay, I think that you can begin with this question.
Well, I mean, the first question by Enrico, I expected it. I mean, it is right. I mean, more or less, water is always the same on this planet. We might have some change, I mean, in the availability, but I mean, the big figures are what we know. Well, I mean, it's not available because climate change. Consider that in the last 100 years, Southern Europe lost something like 30% of the rainwater. That is not peanuts. So it means that that water went somewhere else, but maybe they're not necessary. You know, Copenhagen, as I mean any other large cities in Europe, submitted to the European Commission the climate change adaptation and plan. That's because they have too much water. That means, I mean, they are flooded quite often, and they need, I mean, to invest a lot of money. And the plan is around 10 billion euro plan in order to make the city of Copenhagen more resilient to floods because of rainwater, because of too much water raining over there that we have lost, particularly in the south of Europe, in Italy, in Greece, in southern Spain, and in Portugal. We have lost that water. So it means that water is somewhere else. But then on the top, it is, on the one hand, I mean, climate change is an issue, is a challenge. On the other hand, is that the non-sustainable management of water, as I said, take, use, and dispose, cannot be really done anymore. What actions are taken by, this is Roberto, action taken by the European Union concerning water stress? Well, on the one hand, we have the research innovation framework program as Horizon 2020 and the next Horizon Europe that will provide support in order to explore and find new solutions that are based on water circularity. And the European Green Deal, it's as well giving us all the tools in order to have circularity for real in the water sector. But now I connect, I mean, to the last question. There is a need for change in the mindsets, and this is it's on the top. One of the most important needs for changing really the way that managing water now in the real water smart society. So the mindset are essential. These are essential at governance level, are essential at financing level in terms of investment, plan of the countries or the member states in Europe and beyond Europe to address the water challenge in an effective way.
Okay.
And of course, anybody who is interested in addressing me additional questions, you're welcome to write me my email address, and I'll try my best to respond to you as soon as possible.
Yes, we will collect all the questions, and then I will sum them, and then I will send to you so you can answer to the question. We have time other two questions that I made to you. One is, what is the next most relevant project that European Union has planned in order to mitigate risk related to incorrect water usage? From Marco. And I have another question from Enrico. Is really digitalization the way to solve sustainability stuff and problems?
Okay, the most relevant projects supported by the European Commission. Well, I mean, there are quite a few numbers of interesting projects. I can mention two because they are running and might be interesting from two different points of view. One is called NextGen, is N-E-X-T-E-N, G-A-N, NextGen, is like next generation. That is about a solution for water circularity, and that is quite important because it addresses the circularity in a very systemic way, in the right systemic way. And the other one is the DISTOPIC project. Is about cybersecurity of physical water infrastructures, because cybersecurity is another big challenge. We should not think that the hackers are these strange, dark people behind the computer. I mean, cybersecurity is an industry, or rather, cyber attacks is an industry in Europe and in the world. There is an interesting website that shows you, the number of attacks to digital attacks in the world in almost in real time. It's from Casper. And you can see that it's a real problem. And in the water sector, because of the increased digitalization of the water sector, the sector is becoming more and more vulnerable to cyber attacks. Just to give you an example, there are utilities that found the mix of chemicals for the potabilization of water completely altered because of somebody who entered into the system. But this is just an example. But what's really scaring is the matter that attacks might enter into the DSS, in the decision support system, providing to the decision level wrong and fake data, and then to have in the decision level system making wrong choices, but based on data that are considered reliable, but they are not. And this, it connects to the digitalization of the water sector. It's extremely important. It's not the only action that should be taken, because digital water is for sure one of the most important game that we are going to play in the next 10, 20 years. We need increased, strong, wide, extended digitalization of our water systems, but at the same time, it's not the only challenge. The other challenge is the pollution, but digital water can provide excellent tools to prevent and to reduce a lot of sub-challenges of the water sector, from pollution to water scarcity and so on. If you think, I mean, I'm involved in a project of robotics that is about also how we can use robotics for prevention and maintenance of the water system, of the water networks. And this is a new frontier. I mean, it's something new that is entering into the large chapter of the digitalization of the water sector. But it's not the only one. I mean, we need change of mindsets, good governance, and investments.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Andrea, and really interesting. So I hope also the audience appreciate. I saw a lot of people on following this webinar, and they remain for all the time. So I think also they appreciate, and I saw also some a lot of congratulations from our audience. So thank you to all the audience again for following this webinar. This was the first probably webinar in common between two different chapters, Italian, North Italian chapters and UK. And thank you all. I hope you will answer to the survey that you will receive in automatically in your email for this webinar, and hope to have you also in the next webinars again. Thank you, Andrea, for all.
Thanks for the opportunity, and I wish all, I mean, to stay safe and take care of yourself, I mean, in this strange period of time.
Okay, thank you. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.